are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, once again, it's Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So I notice you're wearing the USA hockey gear. Do you want to kick it off with the Olympics?
I thought we could just throw that in at the end because we are going to take a break after this week for a little, and that was more of my closing more than
Fair
my
enough.
opening.
Well, that's fine. Then we'll start
I feel like we don't want to bury the lead this week with a couple of important items that have some underlying meaning to them, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think the Olympics always get themselves at or near the top of the ticket, but I get what you're saying, and we'll start
I think the Olympics would matter more if it was the way that it was intended to be.
Fair enough.
I can only imagine what the rosters would have looked like if they would have been able to send over NHL players. Let's just
would have been so much fun.
The men's tournament hasn't started yet. It doesn't really get. I think it gets started on Thursday this week. It's a very clear, and I think that was designed on purpose because of the original plan to send said players over. Because if this weekend was All-Star weekend, you could theoretically have a player get named to the All-Star game, participate through Saturday, and still, I guess, get him over there. Or I don't know if it would have worked that way, but
I think they just had those extra days built in so that after play stops for the All-Star break, players can get to China. Start going.
Well,
through
that's what
process.
I mean. I'm saying but I don't know if that's how it would have worked either, because I think there was a lot of quarantine rules for that type of stuff. So maybe it would have been to be able to separate the players who were going from whatever happened with the All-Star game.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying.
And then to also let everybody else who was not part of one or either event to just kind of coast into
to take a nice fat vacation.
What was supposed to be a 2.5 week break.
Yep.
So right now,
that means Cancun for a lot of those guys,
probably, or something like that. So only the women's teams are playing right now, and quite frankly, we'll talk more about it when we get to this section of the show. But quite frankly, if we can just fast forward to Monday night, that would be great. Get to the real two teams that everybody wants to see play each other, that have continuously been the tops of women's hockey. It's pretty obvious who the two alphas are in the group.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of competition in that tournament, except for that one game.
Well, so far, and I can't say that for every other. I haven't seen what the scores are for other games, as these teams play each other.
Right.
It's very clear that U.S. and Canada have quite the upper hand in that tournament.
Yes.
So, judging by also the betting odds, I believe, which were 2 minuses for the U.S. and Canada and massive pluses for everybody else. If you think that somebody from Europe or something is going to defeat one of these two powerhouses, then
doesn't seem particularly likely.
Right. So,
but yeah, we'll jump in with the big local story here.
Do we want to start with the actual last game going into the break and I guess chronologically move through, or do we want to not bury the lead?
Let's hit the big story first, because like we said,
which one's the big story? There's two.
I think the big story is Claude Giroux wins All-Star MVP.
Okay, that's a good place to start.
Okay, so as previously mentioned, Claude Giroux wins the All-Star Game MVP.
Start with recency bias. Let's get
absolutely.
It going. It did just happen on Saturday afternoon. So
did you get a chance to watch the games? And we'll talk about the skills competition in a little bit. But did you watch the games on Saturday afternoon?
More of them than I expected to be honest. There wasn't. Let's put it this way. It is kind of smack in the middle of a weekend when there's not a whole lot going on. I think, if I'm not mistaken, from a local angle. So the Sixers played on Friday night and then didn't have anything on Saturday. And the Sixers played actually on ESPN after the skills competition.
Okay.
So honestly, there were a lot of people who I think flipped over ahead of that game to, whenever you flip over.
Yeah, as lead-in programming.
Well, no, but whenever you flip over, it might be quarter of, 10 of, whatever. And the game scheduled to start at about 10 o'clock, I think is what it was, something in that range. And the finishing moments of the skills competition would have still been on if you flipped over at 9:45, 9:50.
Right.
So, but that's the only, there's no, obviously, scan around the rest of the sports world. The NHL has been off since Thursday to put this event in place, and then is spending what was originally going to be the Olympic break to make up games that got postponed. It's basically that. It's not like they've moved a bunch of games around and said, we're trying to they did it with a few, but I don't think they did it with a whole lot where you're filling out the schedule.
Right.
So It's mostly makeup games. So if your team didn't get postponed a whole lot, you got a lot of downtime. We obviously know where football is right now because it's this weekend is not the Super Bowl. It's next weekend. And the Pro Bowl is also, ironically enough, also in Las Vegas where the NHL All-Star game was. But the Pro Bowl game itself, like I think they did the skills stuff over the portion of the weekend where the NHL stuff was going on. But
they lagged one day behind the NHL. The NHL did skills on Friday, games on Saturday. Right. The NFL did skills on Saturday, game on Sunday.
Or at least they televised the skills on Saturday, because some of that stuff looked like it was recorded at night. So
they definitely filmed quite a lot of that beforehand.
Right. And so either way, so the Pro Bowl is on Sunday. So again, and again, that's like barely the appetizer to what's coming next week. Like not nearly as many people are going to go crazy over the Pro Bowl as they are, hey, wait,
the Pro Bowl is a trash event.
We got the Bengals playing the Rams next week, and that's the game that everybody's going to tune into, obviously. And then all it takes is a quick look at Twitter to see what what Major League Baseball is locked into, which is all of the off the field, off of the playing surface type of stuff that nobody wants to talk about.
And we thought Brad Marchand chirping about escrow was bad.
Sure. But either way, so was there exactly a whole lot else on at 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon to kind of focus on? Not really. I mean, I don't know about where you are. It's kind of cold here this weekend.
The central Illinois is under about a foot of snow.
Okay, well, we don't have that. We did get that
Wednesday into Thursday.
We got that last weekend. That was our Friday into Saturday.
Yeah,
because that was our big thing, and it wasn't like it was for most people. It wouldn't be something that would be considered massive by any stretch. It wasn't a foot, I can tell you that. But it was enough that it derails a lot of people in this area from doing much of anything, because it's a lot for us, I guess, or a lot for most people in this area. Not to mention the fact that I think we got more than what was actually forecast.
Yeah, we ended up the official forecast for us ended up being around 5 to 8, and we ended up with about 12.
Okay, that's about where we were then, because I think we were projected at 2 to 4 last weekend and ended up with about 6 to 7. So there you go. Either way.
All right, back to the actual games.
Basically, there wasn't a whole lot on otherwise. So
might as well.
Exactly. It's not exactly an event anymore. Like I remember in years when I first started doing this type of stuff, I'd sit down, I'd watch it every year. I had to watch the skills competition, I had to watch the All-Star game, and it wasn't just had to watch it, but like I would sit there and want to tweet out stuff during the skills competition, I think I sent 3 tweets during the All-Star game yesterday and it was all centered around what Claude Giroux did. Like, hey, first game just ended, or hey, look, he scored a goal because he scored the 3rd goal of the first game.
Yeah.
2nd goal for the Metro, but the 3rd goal overall. So you're like kind of right away going like, oh, all right.
He's playing.
Like, look, he scored a goal and it's relatively early. So it's not like he's scoring a late goal that doesn't really mean much to the final. He's
contributing to the game. Right.
So, okay. And then I think I threw up another tweet after the fact, and then I actually I didn't see the final game. Which, look, it's not exactly hard to go back and try to run down 20 minutes of game action.
Those boys were playing. Like, nobody was.
I was using the weekend also kind of as mostly a weekend off. So I was on my way to my parents at the time when the final game went off. And so I did listen. I mean, I have the benefit of NHL Network Radio to allow me to hear what's going on. So here was the thing for me as I'm listening to the final game, because I already know at this point what happened in the first game. It was a 6-4 final for the Metro, and as things start moving forward in that game, after the first game anyway, you go, okay, he had a goal and he had an assist, but if we're being honest, first of all, it doesn't matter yet, because the MVP of the tournament that they have is going to come from the winning team. It typically does, So you got to wait and see if they win the championship. Like, let's put it this way. I don't remember, there wasn't an All-Star game last year, and the year before that, they did have one how close to the start of all of the things that we are in now. It was
crazy.
Because it was February 2020, I believe, or January 2020. So that year, I believe Travis Konechny was the representative for the Flyers that year.
Okay.
And the Metro was out in the first game.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of the equation. It's kind of interesting when you watch it today as compared to some of the years when I guess I really first started doing it, which was like I remember writing stuff down to like post about like their tweet or whatever about this stuff, and it's two teams. Like it was what they would do the fantasy draft, and it would be two teams like captained by a specific player or whatever.
Best
and
format in my opinion.
It was real. That was really cool. Yeah, but you got 3 periods of a game, so it wasn't like it was over. You're watching it now, and you sit there and you go, "Oh, the Metro was out in the first game in 2020." And that means Konechny's done. So he had a couple. He might have had 2 or 3 assists. I can't even remember. But that the rest of the night is over. You know what I mean? Like at that point, well, he's not winning MVP because they didn't win the game. They didn't win a game. Period. And he got a couple of points. That's about all I got to highlight.
Top 3 All-Star formats, by the way. Fantasy draft.
Yeah.
Team World versus Team North America, and the current 3-on-3 tournament.
Okay, so I'm going to actually kind of counter one of your takes. I do like the fantasy draft thing. I think the fantasy draft was a great method. It kind of that was an element of fun before the fun, because there's a lot of stuff that happens at these events that the players kind of don't care about.
Fair enough.
But what you like, the genuine fun that you see from the players when they get to play with other players who are insanely talented, superstars on other teams. Like you don't think for a second that, and they didn't even win. But do you think that the guys like whoever's playing for the Pacific, you don't think for a second that those guys getting the chance to skate with McDavid when they normally play him isn't a thrill?
Oh, they know.
Right? Like it's fun. Like take the Atlantic, and again, it's another team that lost in their first game, but take the Atlantic and say, instead of being in-state opponents, Jonathan Huberdeau's playing with Steven Stamkos. And it's kind of cool to see Jonathan
how
Huberdeau,
good they are.
Steven Stamkos. Who else is that point? Because it's the Atlantic. So
Victor Hedman,
Patrice Bergeron's out there, and they're playing with each other.
Yep.
That's supposed to be the point. The thing that I'm not liking about the current format is that now I think that 3-on-3 is becoming a little bit more Like it's 10-minute.
It's a little solved.
Well, it's 2 10-minute periods, right?
Yeah.
There is no reason why both teams should not come away with 10 goals when you don't have no checking. Like they're doing mild stick checking.
B, no back checking.
No, there actually has been more back checking than you think.
And going into the third game, there was quite a lot. Those boys were hustling. Like there was still no hitting, obviously, because you're playing in an all-star game.
The Metro scored.
But they're hustling.
The Metro scored in the first game 12 seconds in, and you think immediately, here we go, because it's as if the goalies didn't even get a chance to warm up. Right. We're just going to start the shooting gallery.
Also, Kuznetsov to Wilson isn't exactly that spicy all-star game.
Well, right. I mean,
combination.
Here's the thing. I want to say I hear you and I agree. But back in the day when you were putting full teams together and they grabbed, like, in the 90s and
they would always stick 2 guys on the same team on the same line.
Like, if they grabbed Lindros and Leclerc, do you think they were separating them for the All-Star game? Absolutely not. So don't even with that.
No, I know.
Yeah, I just thought that there were elements of it eventually where you go, okay, it's a little bit stagnant. Like, eventually, like, you get a little bit of a break and you see a couple of back and forths here and there, but there was an awful lot of we're going to turn back around and recycle the thing and try to go in. There's
a lot of passing back to the goalie.
And it looks like the possession game. The only thing that I thought that's different about it that you kind of like is it kind of feels like you're playing kind of like the pre-agreed NHL 22 rules, if you will, where you go, no stoppages. Goalie has to keep it in play. Like there was a lot of that going on.
Yeah, the goalies were moving the puck. And they were very clearly being told.
Right. I mean, basically, it seemed like there was a concept of it's 10 minutes. Let's keep this as running clock as possible. With the
it was pretty damn close to running clock.
Right. So, which I don't mind. I mean, and they did have stoppages in the middle for
sure.
They stopped it for every goal. And I guess after certain goals, they would stop and they would kind of make it okay, we got to take a timeout really quick, TV timeout. And they would do that like a couple times during the games and all that type of stuff. And it's funny how much time it takes to do this whole thing in a way, because it eventually becomes like almost as long, if not longer than a full game, because
it ends up being probably a little longer.
The first game of the day was Metro Pacific. They introduced both teams for that game
Well,
and then start the game. Then you have a legit intermission because they're going to
put a Machine Gun Kelly concert on.
Well, no, that was after the second one.
That was after the second.
But they're going to legitimately, like, they're going to clean the ice so that the next game gets a fresh sheet of ice. Then they reintroduced, like, now they have to introduce the other two teams, and then they play the other games. So they had a legitimate intermission report.
Oh, it definitely ends up being longer than the games because you got 3 20-minute periods or 3 20-minute games. And then we have all this, extra stuff in the middle. And it ended up probably being about an hour longer than a regular game. It was pretty significantly long.
I was going to say half because I feel like it was over. The whole thing started at 3. It was over by between 6 and 6:30. The game was over.
Okay. Well, yeah, a game's usually about 2.5 hours. That would be
I guess
closing in on 3.
When you consider the fact that the introductions for all 4 teams done over the course of 2 games probably added another 5 minutes onto the thing.
Right.
Each. And then, yes, having a Machine Gun Kelly concert in the middle of
Listen, here's the thing.
Before the championship game.
Real quick note. We're not going to stay on it long. I don't care about Machine Gun Kelly's rap. His pop punk, not bad.
That's the part where I tune out and go and do something else for 20 minutes.
Fair enough.
So either way, like, and that's not, by the way, that's not meant to be a knock on Machine Gun Kelly. That's meant to be a knock on, like, hey, listen, whatever entertainment they want to throw at you, unless it's somebody who I really care about, then it's not going to really.
For the record, I have no desire to watch the Super Bowl, but I will be doing whatever I can to tune in for the halftime show.
Okay, then that's going to be you. I mean, I'm going to see it just to see what it is, but my expectations are low. It's not my kind of music, for one, and two.
Oh, I'm excited.
You know what I'm excited for? I want to see the number of counts I have on how many times the sensor gets used.
I don't know if you'll hear much.
No, you can usually tell when they have to, like, they don't actually, like, they just cut the audio.
No, I'm saying I don't think you'll hear much on the broadcast because of how much is going to be muted out.
Oh, well, that's my expectation as well. But
yeah. So don't plan on listening to a whole lot of actual music.
I mean, I always like the production value that goes into things like that. Don't get me wrong. Like, you're in an outdoor stadium and you can really utilize the space, and it's a lot of pyro, it's a lot of lights, it's very elaborate stuff.
It's Snoop Dogg. And come on now.
The thing is that, like, I got so much into, I can't believe we're on Super Bowl halftime shows now because the All-Star game had entertainment in between periods. That's where we got this from.
Yeah.
But I was always more into, and maybe people hated this type of stuff. I didn't, because I liked the music, and then the shows would still be elaborate, even for not a whole lot of, like, I mean, there's good energy from these things, but I always liked the classic rock bands.
Okay.
That was my thing. I always
fair enough.
Like that run of, how many years, I guess, would that have been? It was probably, I mean, maybe it really started with McCartney, if we really want to think about it, but it continued to evolve from there. Like, I don't think it was just that particular, I don't think that was supposed to start a trend, but I think it did for a little bit, because then it was McCartney, it was the Rolling Stones, it was The Who, it was Prince, it was Tom Petty, it was,
nice.
Like a whole rundown of, and the shows were pretty darn good. And then they kind of got away from that after, like, that 5-year span, and they had some other bands they could have entertained there, like, possibilities where they were following this trend, and they never got to them, and I don't know that they ever will.
I just wish they had been crazy enough to put Axl Rose on a Super Bowl halftime show stage.
Here's the thing too, by the way. You had 2 chances to put him on a stage, because you could have just said, let's see what we can do with Guns N' Roses, or for a little while he was filling in as lead singer of AC/DC.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
You could have grabbed him for that. I mean, if you really wanted to. I mean, I think everybody would like to actually listen to AC/DC, regular as regular a lineup as you're going to get. Which, see, and that's my point. Now you can't go there.
Yep.
So,
all right, let's bring it all the way back.
That feels like a missed opportunity.
Yes.
So
let's bring it all the way back to the games here.
Well, you know what? The music talk is a good segue for me with this, because I'm calling this the first stop on Claude Giroux's farewell tour.
Man, you really had to go there, huh?
I'm a straight shooter with this stuff. I'm not going to sugarcoat or hide what I believe is going to happen.
I know. And I for the record, I believe it's going to happen too. I just don't like it. I think we all kind of know or expect or suspect that the writing is on the wall for Claude Giroux's career as a Philadelphia Flyer to be coming to a close at minimum for now.
Right. So okay. So now that we're off of this subject a little bit with all the
Yeah.
other crazy stuff. So as I'm watching, because you're asking me how much I watched of it and all that stuff like that. So as I'm watching the first game, which he's in the very first game of the day, and like I said, he scores the third goal of the game. It's the second one for the Metro, and you're
Getting
kind of
involved
thinking,
early.
But your first thought is, okay, cool. It wasn't like he was shut out or something like that. It's not like he finished with one assist. Because to an extent, he wasn't exactly the headliner of the Metro. Like, he was the captain, but he wasn't the headliner. Like, you're looking at the other names out there, and you're going, it's quite possible that there's like a lot of other names on this team that you go, they're bigger superstars than Giroux is, just given how good their team is. Like,
Absolutely.
Is Sebastian Aho a bigger player right now than Claude Giroux is? Probably, because Carolina's outstanding. And
I was going to say, I'm willing to say that Sebastian Aho is currently a better player than Claude Giroux. And
how about this one too? Chris Kreider's leading the league in goals. That's
a weird one.
Look, well, listen, he's got more games played than a lot of the others who were there for the whole time. I'm not going to try to take that away, but at the same time, that's who went into the All-Star break with the lead in goals in the league.
It feels a little like, and I know Chris Kreider's had a lot of success the last couple seasons. I think he's been hurt, missing games. This feels a little out of nowhere. Is that crazy? What Chris Kreider's done?
To be a league
leader, be this top level elite.
I don't want to say that it feels out of the ordinary, because he's had like 3 really good years in a row. Like,
has he?
Yeah, like really good. Like,
okay, I'm gonna look up his stats right now.
Here's the problem. At least maybe in your eyes, he's sometimes the typical goal scorer that kind of gets on runs, and it's like, oh, look at that, he scored 10 in 12 games.
It's a little hit or miss.
And then there'll be a few where he probably does nothing. But like, he had games last year where he had.
Okay, so last year he had 20 goals, 30 points in 50 games.
Right, but see, okay, now adjust for normal season, and it's another 30-goal year for him.
Fair enough, but it's close.
He only missed 6 games.
Right.
I'm going to give him the fact that he probably had 20 to 25 more.
That's fair.
To go, and he's going to score 10 goals in that time. Just given who he plays on a power play list. That's fair. That's also what I would say with that.
Season before, 24 goals, 45 points, 63 games. Good. It's probably another 30 right there. If he plays.
That's another one where they played 68 games.
Yep. Yeah.
Because that was the season that got cut short with the pause, right? Okay, so again, same thing. And he was also, by the way, you know what else, by the way? He didn't play in 68 games that year. And I know this because Phil Myers took a shot in a game against the Rangers and broke his foot.
Okay.
Leading up to the pause. So he used the time of the pause to heal up, and he was back for
the bubble
qualifying round of the playoffs, because I think that they lost, because that's how they got the first overall pick.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh, right.
But
they were mystery team.
But think about that. I believe that particular game was the weekend going into, like, the last weekend of February going into March, and they still played for another week and a half after that.
Right.
And Kreider was out that whole time. So
okay.
He
would have missed a large chunk of the rest of the regular season.
He would have, but he's at 20. So he's at 24 goals. You're saying it's
a 30-goal pace. I'm willing to give it to him
in 61 games or 62
63.
Games? Okay, but there you go. So he missed probably about 5 or 6 down the stretch.
Right there at the end.
Given the fact that he had gotten hurt at the end of February, had probably about a 4 to 6 week recovery at least, if not more. I mean, it might have been more than that even. And he was going to, by the time it really came down to it, he was going to be looking at probably an early April return or mid-April return, just in time for the playoffs if they made it, which was a question mark. They weren't guaranteed to make it. The Rangers,
no, definitely not. They were on the bubble
that year. So, no, to me, he's had a couple really good years in a row where he's.
Yeah.
You know what the problem is? 24 goals in that shortened year is no different than the way that everybody looked at Travis Konechny, kind of. It was like, you're getting there. You really have some big-time potential. And I think, Kreider has put together 2 years to follow that everybody wanted Travis Konechny to put together.
Right. To me, it feels a little bit more almost like a Sean Couturier situation where at 26, 27, he all of a sudden decided he can put up 30 goals a year.
A little bit. I mean, the only difference is he's obviously a winger and not a center, which
I understand.
it goes near defensive roles. Again, I do want to throw out there, he also has, within relative recent years, the power play that he's on becomes more and more legitimate because it's gone from just Mika Zibanejad to here's Adam Fox, here's Artemi Panarin. Like,
Absolutely.
they've got a very legit. I mean, and about the only difference outside of that I can think of is that I think, like, up until last season, Pavel Buchnevich was on that power play unit, and now it's probably it's either going to be like a Capo Caco type or something.
Theoretically,
like
you want it to be Alexis Lafreniere one day.
Well, yeah, one day, but I made that point in the press box too, where I said it's not just that the Rangers have like found a way to kind of luck into those picks in the draft lottery, but on top of it, they have enough around them that they were able to do because Panarin wanted to sign there and Fox only wanted to get traded there. That
And
they could
Trouba
also sit there but that they could take those two players, first and second overall in different draft years, and literally not have to play them in top minutes right away
to let them develop.
Right. Well, because look at what happens when they're on the third line. Like, a first overall pick that everybody knew was going first overall is playing on the third line, not because he's not good enough, but because they don't have to.
I've heard some complaints out of New York that he hasn't looked good, that he doesn't blah, blah, blah. He's not getting the time he deserves,
What do they mean not getting the time he
Well,
deserves? Not playing on a role that they think would be better for his game?
Right. I think he's one of those guys, and I think Nolan Patrick kind of had a lot of this in him too when he was here. If he's not playing towards the top of the lineup, if he's not playing a lot of minutes, he's not playing his best hockey.
No, but I think there were more, like with Nolan Patrick, I think there were more chances for that. You know what I mean? Like,
fair enough.
Like, I think he got more chances. I think they actually look at Lafreniere and say, we don't have to do this right now.
It's a patience thing.
Not even that it's a patience thing.
Or I don't think it's a luxury.
Right. I don't think it's that he can't handle it. I think it's that they look at him and go,
you don't need to handle it.
We don't need him to be up there. So put him on a third line because he's got 10 goals this year. It's
right.
not like he's not producing. It's just,
right. For a guy who's playing in your middle six, bottom
you're able
six.
to play him as how often are you able to take a first overall pick and say we can play him as depth? Like, come on,
Right.
Outside of a really poor draft class where you go, that's the ceiling of a first overall pick that year. Like, unless it's that poor of a draft class, then how many times do you take the guy who's, again, probably always been told his entire life, you're the best on your team.
You're going first overall. You're the best in the league.
Right. How many times do you see a guy like that who does not get vaulted into a top 6 role effective immediately?
It's fair. And it's a nice little luxury for the Rangers. But no, it is weird to me that Chris Kreider literally has his career high in goals, and we're halfway through the season, and it's the season he turns 30. Like, it's so late to have like a breakout insane season like that.
And I think the part of it that you're also like wondering about a little bit is that, like, I don't know if you ever looked at him in the past, even with the talent around him on the power play. I don't think anybody ever looked at him in the past and said, there's a 50-goal scorer.
No.
But he just might be this year. Like, that's the thing. Like, they're halfway through their season. What are they at? How many games do they have? 46?
If you told me 5 years ago that Chris Kreider was going to score 50, I would tell you he destroyed about 38 ACLs on the way.
Okay, so 40. All right, so 47. So the Rangers have played 47 games. That means
he's got 47 and 47.
But that means, that still means that they've got 35 to go.
Oh yeah, he's on a 50-plus pace easily.
Right, so he needs a goal every other game to get to 50.
Right, but if you told me 5 years ago, I would have told you to prepare every goalie in the league because it's not going to be a fun year.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing: do I think he's going to finish as the that he's going to win the Rocket Richard Trophy? No, I don't, because Draisaitl's hot on his heels and has way more games ahead of him, and they'll score a bunch of goals whether they do well or not to make the playoffs. Right? Like, Edmonton has those guys, and they will pile up points whether they're in it or not. And you got like Ovechkin's right there, and Matthews is right there, and like.
And both of them have that flip the switch ability where they can just decide to start scoring goals, and all of a sudden they've scored 10 goals in 8 games.
I also think another factor, and look, this is going to probably help Kreider as much as it's going to help those other guys, maybe not Draisaitl, but it's going to help the other 3, well, Kreider and the other 2 specifically. You get to post-trade deadline mark, I'll say, but realistically the game's in April, and playoff positioning's on the line, and you're starting to feel the playoff vibes.
Starting to go.
You also want to start to ramp it up at that time because
Yep.
you want to be at the top of your game going into it. So don't be surprised if those guys take their game to another level because it's playoff time. In Kreider's case, it's going to be more about how much that team is clicking because as much as I think he's got the ability to score on his own, look at who he gets to play with a lot. Like, I think if you can get clicking, that's what they would want. Go into the playoffs as that team. Like, there's a lot of teams from that side of it. I mean, like, let's put it this way. Is it really that much of a shock that the Metro wins at the All-Star game when you consider how great most of their teams are? Like,
Fair.
take the Flyers out of the equation for a second. I'm not trying to make it seem like – here's the thing we'll say about the Flyers with this. We've been saying for a while now that for everything that goes on with that team, who's the best player on the team outside of maybe the goalie? It's still Claude Giroux.
It's been Claude Giroux.
But it still is.
Yep.
This year, and it has been. So when you throw him around, Sebastian Aho's the best player on his team, and Chris Kreider's setting career highs in goals before the All-Star break, and forget Alex Ovechkin, who was at the All-Star game or was supposed to be the captain of the All-Star game and then goes into COVID protocol right before. Forget him, even though he's not like. Man,
Ovi will do anything to not play in an All-Star game, huh?
At least he gets out of the 1-game suspension this time for voluntarily just not deciding.
And I am, of course, making a joke, and I believe he tested positive, so I do wish him the best.
Either way, it doesn't matter that he's not there because Evgeny Kuznetsov and Tom Wilson are there, and for Pittsburgh, it's not even a good enough year for Crosby that he goes. It's Jake Gensel and Tristan Jarry are there. And Carolina also sent Freddie Anderson, by the way, who both of those goalies were really good in both games.
To be fair, I also think the NHL went to teams and kind of sussed out who wanted to play and who didn't want to play before they officially invited people.
I don't know. Wait, are you saying that because Crosby wasn't named to it and Gensel was? I actually think Gensel probably has had the better year because of the fact that Crosby did miss time.
I just think in general across the league.
Yeah, but if Crosby didn't miss time, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of anybody else across the league who would say no to something like this in the event that they did get named to it. But I get it. The captains of the teams originally, that's fan voted in. So fans.
How was Kadri not originally just put in? He was last man in and won it. But how was he not just put in it? Come on.
Because Makar was the obvious choice from that team, and then
I guess,
and then they have to take one from each. Which I got to agree with some of that. Was a big popular player sentiment was. And I'm not saying don't bring one from every team, but the idea that the roster size, what was the roster size for these games? 8?
It was not massive.
Right, but it's close to not being a full team. You could honestly do better by expanding a typical game roster from 18 players to 20. Instead of taking 18 skaters, 2 goalies, take
20 skaters, 2 goalies.
You could even do 20 and 3.
Okay. Fair enough.
This way, 3 goalies, each one gets a period, and 20 skaters, and you can balance it out because at that point in time, if you had 2 skaters, presumably what you kind of would get at that point is you can either go 2 more defensemen and go 12-8, or you can go 14-6, or you can go 13-7.
I think you go 13-7 and then just rotate people because that's the fun of the All-Star game, right? Just let everybody play with everybody.
I don't even know if I want to have a rule on it. It should be kind of the discretion of what conference you're in and
that's fair.
What you have more of. If you can get 2 more defensemen there legitimately, then do 2 more defensemen and make it 12-8.
That's fair.
If it's 2 more forwards, go 14-6. If it's one of each, it's one of each. Hell, make that the final voting thing, and 2 players get voted in based on who didn't make the original teams. But you balance it out a little bit with this concept of, well, if you're going to have 18 skaters and the final 2 are decided by vote, then 18 skaters and you have 16 teams to choose from. Well,
right.
Out of the 16, your representative could be a goalie.
Right.
So you have, and don't make the goalie the extra vote. Make it a skater. So pick 3 goalies legitimately. Pick 18 skaters. so 21 players from among 16 teams. You should have at the slightest a little overlap.
Okay.
And maybe you don't. And maybe you don't. You know, like that's why like I understand where they're coming from with this element of every team has to have a representative. I know why every team has a representative.
Right.
It's like anything else. Every team's represented because what you're trying to do is make this a massive event where fans of every team want to come.
Yep.
Like, look, take what's going on in their situation for what it is. But if you're an Arizona Coyotes fan, and I know that there's a little bit of irony to that statement, but okay, let's just say you're like, if that's your team, why are you going to go to something if they don't take one of your players?
Yeah. Absolutely not. You like if I'm a Detroit Red Wings fan, I'm not sitting there. I'm sitting like I have this trip planned. I'm gonna go to Vegas. I'm gonna see all the best in the NHL. It's gonna be great. But what I'm really excited for is I'm gonna see Dylan Larkin, and I'm gonna get a chance to meet him and hopefully take a picture with him, and we'll try to make that work. I'll try to find him. He's the only Red Wing there. Oh, you didn't take a Red Wing. Why am I going? And now all of a sudden I'm done. Because they only announce it 2 weeks before. Like, it's not like they don't give you time.
Right. So I don't,
People have been planning this trip for months, I'm sure.
And I don't think that it's as much of a travel event as you're making it out to be a little bit there. Like, I think
it's a special trip event for sure.
I think it is, but I think that most of the people who go to something like that are actually traveling either really planned it from the beginning and are just going as NHL fans, or do more of a last minute approach and see who's going and then go to support that player. Okay. And the rest to me is a city, like, where is it located, and people from there get to go see the best of the best collectively.
I think specifically the Vegas All-Star Game was a travel event. Let me clarify that.
Well, okay, so
that's location based.
Well, because that's the other angle of it. If you're going to have it in a place like, I don't know who. It's been so long. I mean, I think St. Louis held it last time. There was a game, but like it was.
Yeah, it was St. Louis.
But let's play hypotheticals here. When the All-Star Game is in Los Angeles, or when the All-Star Game, if it's in Nashville, let's say, or if it's take a place that's a decent enough tourist attraction, if you will, or draws some tourism. Then it's not just about the game. Then you're going in and you're saying, oh, by the way, I can come into this picture here and be go to the event, but I can also sightsee, and I can turn it into a week or long weekend or whatever you want to do with said trip. And it becomes the same, you know what it is though too with that? It becomes the same thing that the draft becomes. It becomes the same thing that any national league-wide event becomes.
It becomes an NHL convention with an event happening.
To an extent, yeah. Which, that I guess is the benefit of it. I don't think people care about All-Star games in general as much as they used to.
That's fair.
And I mean, it just is what it is. I think that people now recognize that more than anything, you see these guys on such a regular basis, not playing with each other, obviously, but and look, is there a chance down the road that we could get another World Cup? Is there, wasn't the goal to get the Olympics to be U.S. and Canada and probably the Russian team and
best on best,
and be loaded up with hey, who's headlining for the U.S.? Probably Austin Matthews. Who's headlining for Canada? Probably Connor McDavid. Who's headlining for Russia? Alex Ovechkin. To get those guys, and then it wouldn't just stop there, because obviously there's other Americans, there's other Canadians. It's gonna be loaded teams across the board. Right.
Yeah, and there is some talk about getting another World Cup of hockey. We've heard some talk about, was it 2024?
Right.
February of 2024. So, not necessarily anytime soon, but there is talk about getting the World Cup of hockey back up. And
well, because I think the target is, obviously with the way things have gone, 2026 is when the next Winter Olympics will be. I think that's still on the table for them because they still want to.
I think it better be if you're the NHL.
It better be for the sake of the NHL if you're Alex Ovechkin, because I think Ovi's going to unleash his wrath if you don't go for some reason.
I think Ovi's going back to Russia if you don't go back.
Which I don't think you want to do because of where his stature is, not just with the league, but
to be fair, in the next 4 years, he might very well break it.
Right, I'm saying there's a certain record he's coming closer and closer to achieving.
Oh my God, imagine if he's at 892 and he just holds the NHL hostage and goes, so we going or am I scoring here? I'm not breaking this record until you say we're going.
I mean, by that point, to give them a chance to do something that, what would it be? It would be over 30 years at that point. I mean, consider what's going to happen when something like that does finally happen, by the way, because if you go back and look up when Gretzky broke Gordie Howe's record for stuff like that,
Yeah.
they had Gordie Howe practically traveling with him.
And I imagine it's going to be much of the same
so
for
that
Wayne.
He could be there. And now that Gretzky's kind of back in the spotlight a little bit by doing the broadcast stuff again, like, they'll get him wherever the hell they need to get him to.
Oh, yeah.
To watch this happen in person, to literally do exactly the same thing, stop the game.
And they will.
To honor this moment.
And they should.
And, and all that type of stuff. And I think that.
Man, how often do you see a Gretzky record fall? Like, can we talk about that? Like, that's crazy.
What, you mean you don't? Is that the point?
Yes.
But also, I would say the other thing that's going to be really interesting to me about that particular record, whenever it does happen, is how Ovechkin has one thing that Gretzky can't say for his career at this point.
Okay.
And it's probably going to be. I assume it's going to be this way. Unless something crazy happens in Ovechkin's career.
We go on one team.
Yeah, because the fact that he signed that contract and didn't go somewhere else after 15 years with them, and he's going to more than likely finish it out there. It's not going to be the same thing as, hey, he scored the goal that sets a record. When Gretzky finally did all that stuff, Gretzky didn't set the points and goals records playing for the Edmonton Oilers.
Right.
He did it with the LA Kings.
Yep.
And that's not to take away from what he did. He was the best player in the world, and he did a lot in one location and won a lot in one location, and then went to another and still did a lot but didn't win again, after that. But either way, like
it really feels like somebody's closing in on Bruno Sammartino's 2,803-day reign as WWF World Champion.
I mean, here's the thing though. Like, Ovechkin's never going to be Gretzky in the sense that, sure, he might score more goals than Gretzky, but he's never going to be Gretzky in the sense that, like, they didn't win as much.
Right.
To stay with one team but not win as much, to not even get to the finals that much,
It's fair.
Like that's another. Like, Gretzky, I think, ended up by the end of the whole thing, played in 5 Stanley Cup finals in his career. Won 4, played in 5. Or no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. No, he played in more. He played in 6 because the year before they actually won, he played. That was the last year of the Islanders' reign, and they that was who they played, and they got like completely demolished by the Islanders before that dynasty came to an end.
A lot of blue and orange.
Right, but either way,
a lot of blue and orange parades for about 10 years there.
But either way, that to me, like, the fact that Ovechkin gets to do it with one team. Now, granted, doesn't have the finals and doesn't have the cup wins and all that stuff, because Gretzky's going to go down for that.
Gretzky's,
Well, Gretzky's not even the most decorated in that area, though. We got to be realistic.
No, that is fair.
Like, he's not even close. Like, he's not even from his own era is he the most decorated. His own teammate is more decorated than he.
I mean, technically, yeah.
What? Mark Messier won 5 cups with Edmonton and then added his 6th with the Rangers.
Yeah.
Gretzky
Fair
got
enough.
4. Gretzky got 4.
Fair enough.
He is more decorated.
Yeah.
In his own era. Not to mention anybody who was attached to the Montreal Canadiens from, like,
the original 6 doesn't not count.
Doesn't matter if you're tell that to Jean Beliveau. How many cups?
No, fair, but it doesn't count when it's only 6 teams and you like when one guy owns 4 of the teams. Like, come on, let's not pretend like it was a fair and balanced league.
I mean, listen, there's only been one time a Canadian team has won in my lifetime. I will go there with you on that.
That's fair.
Like, it doesn't happen a lot. And I don't even know if there's a good candidate this year. I mean, who's everybody attaching their hopes to this year? Toronto?
If there's a Canadian hope, it's Toronto. And,
Like, and that's not meant to be like, seriously, I know that's an easy knock on Toronto. Like, hey, the first round thing, okay, I get it. But, like, that's not even meant to be a knock. That's me sitting here going, then the only other Canadian team in a playoff picture right now is Calgary.
The Flyers have won more first-round playoff series in the last 10 years than the Leafs.
Yeah.
Yep, they sure have.
I mean, well, I don't want to speak for this year too soon,
Yeah, you're right.
This could be the year, and then they're even.
No, I think, honestly, they do the Ovechkin thing where once they get over the hump, they roll. Once Ovechkin beat Pittsburgh, they're rolling.
I think Pittsburgh it wasn't a matter of just beating Pittsburgh. It was just the fact that it was the second round again.
For sure.
Once we got to a conference final, it was a pretty big deal.
And once Austin Matthews and Bunch get over that first round hump, I think they're going to find some confidence and roll and be dangerous.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't. The playoffs is a different animal, though.
You're right. We'll see when we get there.
Back to Claude Giroux.
Somehow back to Claude Giroux winning All-Star Game MVP.
I'm trying to put a bow on this so we can get to the other topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because let's put it this way. We started on this whole part. Somehow we got off on that tangent from this is the first stop on his farewell tour.
It's the Winter Olympic break. It's fine. And
I know.
This is a nice little time to add that programming reminder that we will be taking next week off and we'll be back the following week.
Yeah. So either way. All right. So here's where I'm at with this. You don't want to hear about it. Like the thought of it. Like I'm telling you to brace yourself on. But either way. So okay. So as the game progresses, he scores in the first game. He gets another assist. Okay. You're halfway through. Now you start to think. Okay. Now you're in the final. So we got to wait and see what happens in the final because it's usually someone from the winning team is. And as I'm listening along to the final game, and the Metro goes up. I think the Metro went up 3-1. And then they continue to expand on it. Next thing you know, they're going to go on to win 5-3 in that championship game. And Claude Giroux has 2 more goals. And I'm sitting there going, like, once he got the second one, because getting the first one, he had gotten the first one. And I think Jack Hughes had a good amount of points in the whole thing as well. Like, Jack Hughes was scoring. He had 2 goals in the first game. One was an empty netter. You really want to go there instead?
No, we can keep going on this.
Boosting his trade value. Yeah, because his performance in the skills competition at the All-Star game, not even the skills competition, like, you know what I mean, in 3-on-3 at an All-Star game is what's going to make every team out there go, oh, yeah. I mean, no.
It boosts trade value because they don't have to pay for travel because they know he's got that truck he can drive there.
I guess. No, you know what actually I do think boosts his trade value, and I wrote a story on this morning. Kind of going over how it feels like the first stop of the farewell tour, all that type of stuff. But he had there were some really good telling quotes from guys on the team with him. Rod Brind'Amour too, who said first of all, who said good for him. He's been around the block for a while, and you can tell how much of a competitor he is and all that stuff. Zach Werenski said he can't that before the game, Giroux kind of was, and I guess Brind'Amour chimed in on this, there was conflicting stories about who was really firing who up to go out and win, but that Giroux kind of had said something along the lines of, well, we're already here, let's go win it.
Fair enough.
But it resonated, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there was definitely a level of respect.
Oh, captain, my captain.
For Giroux at this particular All-Star game. So,
well, he's an elder statesman now. He's starting to get on that backside.
Into the narrative is all I'm saying. But yeah, once he scored 2 in the second game, I'm sitting there going,
they're gonna give it to him.
Well, I'm sitting there going, if they win, because I'm like, it was still he had scored the second one. It was still way too early, but I'm like, if they win, he might get the MVP.
For the record, watching the back half of that second game, Tristan Jarry became the MVP in my book.
I did not watch the last game. I was listening because I was in the car. But as I'm listening, I keep hearing that Jarry's making save after
He's
save
making
after save.
saves. He's putting effort forth.
And I'm going, they might change their mind here. Giroux is pretty much the obvious choice among a player, like a skater, because at this point, he's got 2 goals in the championship game. He had 2 points in the first one. Collectively, as a team, they scored 11 goals total, and he's factored into 4, including scoring 3. Right. If goal scoring is the name of the game in the All-Star game, then he's got the upper hand on who wins the MVP award among the rest of those players who are scoring goals. Because aside from Jack Hughes, I don't think that there was a lot of guys who didn't even score. Period. I don't think Werenski scored. Aho, I think, had 1. Who else? Yeah,
there weren't a lot of contenders.
Kreider had 1. But I'm narrowing it down because it was a lot of Jack Hughes, it was a lot of Claude Giroux, and then Kreider had 1, Aho had 1. Gensel had 1 from Giroux.
Yep.
So you're starting to think about that's what I'm saying. It started to veer into there was 2 pretty clear-cut skaters who were putting up the most points. And Giroux actually, I think by the end of it, was either putting up more goals, or if he didn't put up more goals than Hughes, it was more important goals because he scored twice out of 5 in the championship game. So that's the thing. But I think they said that Jari made like 13 saves on 14 shots in the back half of that, in the final 10 minutes of that championship game alone.
Yeah, he was legitimately playing well.
And collectively, for an All-Star game, their goalies allowed only 7 goals.
Not bad.
7 goals in 40 minutes.
For an 3-on-3 play.
Right, in 40 minutes of 3-on-3.
Yep. And it's wide open shinny. Nobody's back checking, especially in that first game.
And by the way, facing at least in the first game anyway,
Connor
facing McDavid, and
Draisaitl,
like guys who, if you give them, and McDavid had a breakaway and did not score. Like things like that. And then in the second game, they get the Central, which is your Colorado guys. Jordan Kyrou was having a great game. Pavelski scored a couple times, so he was very present. Think about, like I said, I just said the Colorado guys. It was just Kadri and Makar, but
right,
still super talented.
For some reason, Nathan McKinnon's not there.
McKinnon's hurt right now, actually. Though.
Oh, right.
So I think that played into it as well. Like
that's fair.
McKinnon just suffered a concussion not too long ago, or something of the sort. So he's not available. Landeskog was out for a really long time. Rantanen missed some time. Like at the end of the day, unfortunately, a thing that also crept in for this All-Star game in particular was you just had some of the biggest names in the league who just happened to miss some time this year.
Yep.
It's just like if you're going to take the guys who at the end of the day,
that's how you end up with Jake Gensel out of Pittsburgh.
Oh, and I'll tell you who else, by the way, because I was about to go look and see who's, like, again, leading the league in goals and probably made it by merit of that. Alex DeBrincat was also very present for the Central. Right. So, and again, for a team that's not very good, but
he's very good.
He's having a really good year. And
Alex DeBrincat is a very good hockey player.
Yes, he is.
I would love if there was some sort of shake-up with them. If they're looking to make some moves, get some young players. The Flyers are looking to aggressively retool. I don't know if you're going to be able to pry Alex DeBrincat away from him just because of how much he means to that franchise at this point in time. But, man, I would do it.
I mean, that franchise is a whole nother story, though.
Yeah, you're not wrong. That's why I'm strictly staying with the on-the-ice stuff.
I hear you. But either way, like the thought creeps into your mind as the games progress. Hey, he might win it. And then they actually tell you that he did. And you go... It's not a surprise when you listen to what he actually did within the games, but you're going, man, like that feels like the first step to that feels like a respect move, knowing that his name is going to be out there.
It's the turning.
Lot.
It's the early tease in the Disney story. It's the early tease that things are starting to kind of turn around for him.
It's just one of those things where you go, his name's going to start to be mentioned a lot. Like it already has been. But it's going to be mentioned even more. It's going to hit, levels we have not seen yet.
When they do the eventual Disney movie about Claude Giroux's life, things are down, the Flyers are bad, and then he gets named to the All-Star team. And then a couple days before the game, he's upgraded to captain. Oh, and he gets to do the cool Vegas fountain thing. That's pretty neat. Oh, and then he wins MVP of the games. Come on, it writes itself.
The cool Vegas fountain thing wasn't all that cool to me.
Hey, sure, but they'll show it in a montage with some music, and
No, I get that. I know what you're saying. A lot of the skills competition. If I can make one comment on the skills competition before we go to the other news, it's in a week.
Yeah, I did want to touch on the skills competition for sure.
Well, because here's my thing with the skills competition. If nothing else, the thing that I took away from it, because most of it at the beginning, like, it's not to say that certain skills are staples, right? So
hardest shot, accuracy, fastest skater.
Okay, well, I have a gripe about accuracy shooting that I want to mention.
Okay.
I don't even remember. I actually turned the skills competition on a little late on Friday, so I had missed fastest skater by that point. Apparently.
Okay. And, yeah, they did it right off the top.
Well, and let's just say the fact that McDavid didn't win it. I heard he stumbled a little bit or whatever the case may be. I'm looking at that and I'm going, I don't even know if it was one of those things where they cared enough to worry about whether or not they won things like fastest skater or whatever.
Right.
Again, it was kind of just a going through whatever.
The guys looked like they wanted a little bit of time to stretch out, and they didn't get a whole lot of time. Every single guy who went through fastest skater looked kind of tight.
So here's where I'm at with this. They did that. The save streak thing. the save streak thing has the potential to be really cool because there's a bunch of guys going in on breakaways, and it's about the goalies making saves. The problem is that after you got through the tandem that has two really good goalies in it, everybody else was relative. I mean, up until maybe the last duo, everybody else was relatively awful.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know that Vasilevsky and Campbell are going to be winning this.
Two. Come on. Like, I know that the goalies are in a really rough spot in the All-Star game festivities.
Yeah.
Because, like, come on. But, like, if you're going to do an event designed to be save streaked, which means that you know that they're going to actually have to try a little, like, man alive, at least have some goalies in there that can make more than 2 saves in a row in tandem. Like,
first of all, I'm waiting for fastest skater goalie edition.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
There's a competition that's safe for goalies.
Either way, so that it's not that it was boring. It was just like after one duo gets 9 in a row, and
you're like, oh, we're done here.
Yeah, and you're getting excited about because you're going now. Some like right off the bat, they set the bar. Now it means that 2 others are going to go in there, and they have to like. There's kind of no way to do this now without trying. You have to try to make 9
to have a shot at winning
here,
right?
If you want to really win this thing, and it just didn't feel like I thought that the last duo, I think they got 5 because that was the Pacific, I think, right? That was the Central goalie, so it would have been UC Saros was in one net, and I'm trying to remember who was in the other.
Flyers legend Cam
Talbot, yeah, and they had cameras on too, which was pretty cool. But either way. I think what was after that at that point? After that they started doing some of those gimmicky kind of things which are geared towards Vegas because it was, look, we're doing it at the fountains or we're shutting down the Vegas Strip to do a blackjack thing or whatever.
Right.
Like don't get me wrong, I don't think it was like I don't think that the setting was too hokey or anything like that.
Blackjack was friggin' stupid.
I liked that better than I liked the fountain thing.
Really? Okay, so for me, the fountain thing was, remember a couple years ago in St. Louis when they tried that awful, because St. Louis was the one that had no fans, so they did the whole, arena shooting thing, and you were shooting towards the net.
Oh, there were fans there.
Or was there? Or there wasn't gonna be, and they had it planned. Whatever.
No. This was the one.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else.
Yeah, the one in St. Louis was pre shutdowns. So.
Oh, okay.
But they needed something different. They always want to try. The goal is, I think, they always want to try something new.
Right.
And the best thing that they could do in St. Louis was let's try to do. It was almost like trick shots in a way, where it's like, look, we're gonna put some targets out there. It's distance shooting. Let's see how well you can do. This
felt like that, but better after it's been iterated on and actually thought through a little bit better. And
okay, I don't think it was Here's the thing. I don't disagree with you in the sense that. Backdrop wise, it was immensely better. There's definitely nothing wrong with if you're going to go to a specific location for the All-Star game to find a way to incorporate the location more and the arena less. The thing I didn't like about it was sort of as it progressed along. I mean, there were a couple in the middle that were impressive, but you had guys who were just up there missing left and right. I mean, down to the point where I think the first one who actually completed it in a decent amount of time was Jocelyn Lamoureux.
Yeah.
And look, mad respect to her because she's an insanely talented. I mean, they were obviously the Twins were such a key part to the gold medal winning team 4 years ago, and they have insane talent. That's not to take away from that, but my thing was that even down to the final, okay, they get it down to the final. There's 2 players left. I think the winning time was still 28 seconds or something like that because there was a lot of misses. And it's I don't want to watch, it's a skills competition. I'm not saying that guys aren't going to miss on occasion, but I don't want to watch guys miss for 30 seconds trying to get these 2 really small targets that are not far from the platform because you've got to sauce it to it, you know?
Yeah. I guess it definitely wasn't perfect.
No, but it was the amount of misses. It started to get ridiculous where it's oh, come on. I'm not trying to say it's not supposed to be hard, but come on, you know,
I get what you're saying.
Because from there, the blackjack thing, it wasn't that it was. Again, it was nice backdrop because you're out and about on the town. Good call. I don't know what the significance. To be honest, by the way, the name also was really confusing. By the way,
yeah, 21 and 22. Yeah.
Yeah, because, okay, what do you think of when you hear that name? No,
I have no idea.
Because what I think is they called it NHL 21 and 22, and I thought of, oh, are we gonna have two guys just stand here and play a video game then or something? Like
That's fair.
Like that's what it sounds
That
like.
would be
It should
great.
Sponsored by EA Sports. You know,
That would be great.
Either
You know
way.
what? Honestly, I would not hate a Chell tournament as a skills competition event, like an all-star weekend event.
Yeah, I don't think it should be in the skills competition, but I do think
That's
it should be
fair.
an all-star weekend event. Yes,
I think that
great.
sounds fun. Get 8 guys, or even if you only get 4 guys, whatever bracket number is going to work for you.
I think that if you wanted to involve enough players in it, you make it part of a media day thing.
Okay.
Like part of your media day go around is not just doing the press conferences in like this giant.
You're going to play the Chell
setting.
tournament.
Like, and it doesn't have to be everybody, but you get 8 people who are interested, and you bring them in to play each other. And,
If you're including it in media day, you can put 16 in there.
Well, okay, I don't mean it like that. I'm saying like in part of their schedule for that kind of day, though.
That's
like,
fair.
You're not going to end up on the ice per se, which I think they do anyway. I think media day is technically leading up to the skills competition, but you could just as easily grab a few players and say, hey, listen, we're going to do this event. It's going to be 2 hours long.
The winner gets 5K or whatever.
Right. Something like that. Either way.
I'm sure the boys would make it interesting if there were no prizes on the line.
Right. Either way. So I didn't hate some of the stuff in like I didn't hate the idea of going on location in the skills competition. I was, to be fair, the blackjack thing happened after the best part of it to me, which was the breakaway challenge. The breakaway challenge, you get 4 young players.
That was done really well.
Because who was it? DeBrincat was in it, and DeBrincat was the last of the 4 young guys. Because Pietrangelo was 5th. DeBrincat was 4th. Jack Hughes was 3rd. Trevor Zegras was 2nd. And who let it off?
Kaprizov was there.
Kaprizov, because he came out and he had the Ovechkin jersey on.
That was cool, man.
Right. So now you get a young Russian player in Kirill Kaprizov who comes out knowing that Ovechkin's not there because of COVID protocol, has an Ovechkin jersey on, and shoots as him, and shoots with a different-handed stick.
Yeah, went lefty for it.
To really, to go righty, you mean?
Or go righty for it. Yeah. He's a lefty, right.
The best one, Zegras was the best one.
Oh, by far.
Hughes was a close second.
Zegras was the best shot. Hughes was the best show.
Theatrics, yeah, okay.
And to me, the shot matters.
Right, but especially to pull Mini Hughes out of the.
You know who didn't do the best? You know who didn't have the best of anything? Alex Pietrangelo. Sorry, Alex.
The guy who won.
Yeah,
because it was totally rigged to be. Hey, the guy who plays for the hometown team's got to win.
Yeah, like here's the thing. We've known for a very long time that those celebrity judge scores aren't always,
right, but
100% legitimate. That was egregious. That was bad. He missed the net twice on wristers.
Right.
He missed the net.
Okay. Well, let me add to this then a little bit too, because herein lies the problem with some of the things in the National Hockey League.
This is a loaded one.
Well, I said part of.
Yeah.
4 young players. I mean, 4 players within 3 years, probably. I mean, DeBrincat maybe a little bit more, but within 3-4 years of entering the league. Most of them within 2.
Right.
Zegras is a rookie. Jack
all
Hughes
very
is
young.
What, 3 years in?
Something like that.
Kaprizov is 2 years in. Like all these guys are.
He's not super young, but I get what you're saying.
No, but you know what I mean. Well, no, but young enough.
Fair enough.
That they carry a level. Like the thing you wanted to see most, and what gets you excited for that particular event in the skills competition is this is a free for all. Here comes a player with an idea. I got something up my sleeve for the breakaway challenge.
Yeah.
They come out, they put on a show. It's entertaining. They show they have a personality. I mean, Zegras comes out like he's in dodgeball.
So good.
Jack Hughes turns into a magician, puts a cape on, has the top hat, produces Mini Hughes out of a box.
That kid was great.
And that was outstanding. I'm trying to think of what some of the other ones were. I mean, the OV jersey wasn't anything that's overly unusual. We've seen people do different jerseys before,
and we've seen OV do stuff like that, which is why I think he.
But I think it was right. But I think
it was an homage.
But it was a nod not only to hey, OV's not here and he was supposed to be, but also,
this is the kind of thing he would do.
This type of stuff. I'm gonna do it for OV.
It was an homage, start to finish.
And
it was beautifully done.
Did you get that too? He tweeted about it. Like,
no,
not
did he?
Bad. Yeah, he apparently sent out not bad. That was pretty good. I liked it. And they told Kaprizov about it afterwards, and he had no idea that Ovi had even like responded to the fact that he did that, which was cool.
That's pretty cool.
And then you get DeBrincat, who does the whole hangover thing.
Yeah,
which it was just funny. Like it
fell a little flat for me.
I think it fell flat. Maybe it fell flat after the first couple because like you had a couple like that were very, very good for what the player like. Zegers, we all know, is entertaining as hell.
Yeah,
and Hughes has got some of it in. And actually, the thing I thought that was the best touch on what Hughes did wasn't all the theatrics leading up to, but he lets the kids score. They both are celebrating, and then they're throwing the sticks into the crowd. Like,
yep.
Homage to what you did at the beginning of the year, that celebration, which got everybody paying attention to you.
And they threw it in perfect unison too. Right. It was really well done.
Like, well done. That's using your brain and getting creative. So
I agree.
I like that stuff. So I even sent a tweet out that was the only tweet I think I did during the entire skills competition, which was just, hey, listen, look at these 4 young stars showing off a little bit of personality. Whether you think that, like, and again, whether you believe that
great for the game,
right? Whether you think what DeBrincat did was maybe flat or not. Like I was laughing. You know what I was laughing at most about it? Actually, the fact that he shot a football into a net. That was kind of funny.
Fair enough. Like, it wasn't knockoff Mike Tyson.
No, it wasn't. And again, nice look. Another nice touch, by the way. Nice touch to grab the quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders and have him be part of your sketch.
Fair enough.
Like you're playing to the hometown a little bit. Good call, right? Like good call. Here's 4 young players, and each one of them just showed a little bit of personality somewhere in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, NHL, market them.
Pay attention.
Like realize that this is what people want to see more of.
But who got named the winner?
Well, right, that's the problem.
Right.
The problem is that, and whether that's the celebrity judge thing, and it's, hey, everybody's here from Vegas anyway, so we're just going to give it to the Vegas guy or whatever. Like
those scorecards were written for them.
Right. He didn't score a goal. Like, come on.
He missed the net twice.
Right.
On wrist shots from close.
I mean, by that point, the rest of the competition. Okay, so my gripe. I have one gripe about accuracy shooting.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with who won or lost or anything.
Is it the fact that they're not the old styrofoam targets that burst in the really satisfying fashion?
Those mostly were, to be honest. Like they were more styrofoam than they have been in the past.
Yeah, I didn't like the light up garbage.
Right, wasn't it like 2 years ago? It was like light up.
And they just weren't. They didn't work half the time. Where a guy would thunk it dead center and it didn't turn on.
Yeah, and I think they learned their lesson. Let's get something that breaks into a million pieces.
Yeah, it's way better.
No, my gripe is this. Okay, you could be like. I remember back in the day what that portion of the skills competition used to be about, which is the goal was you don't get that many shots. You have to go as close to 4 for 4 as you can.
Right.
And I think you got something like 7 or 8 shots. That was it.
I think it was 10, but I might be wrong about that.
Either way, you had only so many chances. So actually, believe it or not, more guys took their time.
Yep.
And focused on, if I can hit 4 for 4, I'm challenging the person after me to not miss.
And then it goes by time as your first tiebreaker.
Right. As your first tiebreaker to, 3 guys nobody went 4 for 4, 3 guys went 4 for 5. Who did it the fastest?
Right.
But you're not thinking of the fastest. You're thinking about trying to actually hit the targets 4 for 4.
I agree that
switch. Now it becomes let's look. If you can smash 4 targets by taking 10 shots in 10 seconds, good for you.
Fire pucks to the net and go.
And the thing is that to me, what sets the tone, like I get way more excited about the possibility. I think one guy did actually go 4 for 4, but took too long.
Aho.
Right, but didn't he take too long? Or maybe he didn't take too long because he went 4 for 4 and.
No, what happened was one of the targets was a little uncertain if he hit it or not, but he did.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But either way, you get more excited at the prospect of, oh look, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3. Like you're starting to build because someone's doing it that well, as opposed to like you're almost out of it the second that the guy I forget who it was. And by the way, it was not Johnny Gaudreau who was in it and didn't hit the first shot either. Like didn't hit a target on the first shot. But there was one guy who took his first shot and it hit dead center of the net. And I'm like, well, right away you're like, all right, you're out.
Right. You're not going 4 for 4. Yeah, that switch to judging the winner based on time, it's a mistake in my opinion.
I just don't like it because it's not really what the competition is about. And
right. It's about shooting accurately, not shooting quickly and accurately.
Right. So my gripes from the whole thing would have been the outdoor stuff was a little bit like the games itself, the skills itself were a little The setting was cool, but the skills were a little to me. Accuracy shooting should be about accuracy, not about speed. Hardest shot needed more participants.
I agree.
Four was not enough, especially when one of them's Victor freaking Hedman, who you knew was probably gonna wipe the floor with the comment. He didn't completely. I mean, he was not that far ahead, but you knew he was gonna probably be the winner.
Yeah, but you also had 2 forwards and 2 defensemen. Like, it wasn't.
I mean, it's not exactly the good old days of Zdeno Chara and Shea Weber duking it out.
Right.
So you got that. What else was there even to talk about? The save streak thing was kind of lame because nobody bothered to make saves. It was kind of just rough to me. And then you got what else was left? The breakaway challenge was fun, but again, the winner was totally rigged.
But you're right. I did want to mention there. To me, Zegras is the winner because I think he had the second best presentation, the second best show behind Jack Hughes, but he had by far the best shot. The most technical shot because that was insane.
Well, it's the most technical. Here's the thing: for some players, and I'm not trying to downplay it, for players of that level who do crazy things, is it that overly skilled that it's not something that they can somewhat easily do? Probably not for him, but he did it blindfolded.
Right.
Like hit the net while you're blindfolded. Doing a skill like that where you're spinning yourself around is not easy.
It's not human. It's not human.
I'm saying, what I'm trying to say when I say it's something that's somewhat easy for him, take the blindfold out of the equation. He can pick up the puck on his stick and spin and score.
He's done it 100 times, 1,000 times.
You're talking about a guy who did the Michigan on the move,
on the
couple
fly.
Weeks ago.
He's so exciting, dude. He is such a fun player to watch.
And the guy and dear NHL, take this as an absolute gift right now. He's got a personality to go with it.
Sell 1 billion Trevor Zegras jerseys over the next 10 years. 1 billion of them.
Okay, the other thing that was really funny, by the way, speaking of him in particular, did you see the video back at the holidays where the Ducks put out where they filmed a bunch of guys doing the holiday message?
No.
And they had the teddy bear in the corner, and Kevin Shattenkirk was in the teddy bear, so he's scaring people. Zegras had the best reaction of getting scared. Like most of them kind of like laugh. Actually, one of the guys who came in, I forget who the hell it was. Might have been like Hampus Lindholm or something like that. But there was one guy who sat down next to the thing and went to go put his hand on the thing and then stopped and went, "That thing's hot as hell. Someone's in that. I know better." And
that's funny.
Called it out. But most of them didn't know. And Zegras had the best scare of the whole thing. And that was funny.
It's like the good old cooler snake prank.
Right, but that was funny. Yeah, but that was funny. You know what I mean? Like, it was funny to watch him get scared and show he had a personality that way too. All right, let's move on to
Give me sometime in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Put Trevor Zegras' name on the Eggplant Mighty Ducks jersey. Just give it to me. Just give it to me.
I don't know if you know this or not yet. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I have heard rumblings, and there's a YouTube channel, and I'll shout him out because I do like his videos. Post to Post.
Oh, I like Post to Post. Okay.
Okay. There's rumblings that they're bringing back reverse retro next year in a new fashion.
Just do it.
Hold on. And he did it. The guy on Post to Post. He did a very extensive video on concepts for these reverse retros. And what he did was send a guy who can do the design work, like who goes into those programs where you take the blank canvas jersey and can do whatever with it. Basically, either sent his own concept, like this is what I think it's going to be because I don't have any intel, or he knows a couple people with teams who may know and goes, this is what I've heard, so create this. And supposedly the Ducks one wasn't the eggplant version, because it wasn't dark, but it was the very classic D3. Yeah.
The varsity game jersey?
Yes.
Oof.
And basically the idea, he even said, I know it's just a straight up retro, essentially.
Yeah.
But this is what basically, if I remember correctly from watching that video, he said
that jersey's so crisp.
That the Ducks have two possibilities here, and it's not specific possibilities, but either they're going to go something so straightforward that it's basically going to be it's
a Mighty Ducks jersey,
exact retro jersey, or it's going to be again kind of like what they did last time around, something that's really out of left field.
Okay. Yeah, and you know what? I really do like the reverse retro series. At least the first iteration of it. I think for the most part, it was very good.
Yeah, the thing about the reverse retro this time around is going to be, what do you do this time if you don't have an expansive thing? Like,
I hope teams go more off the wall.
Well, and truth be told, a good suggestion for like certain teams, like Detroit doesn't have much flexibility in this field, right?
Fair enough.
Okay, so the suggestion from the video that I'm referring to was actually along the lines of something they wore in either a Winter Classic or a Stadium Series. I can't remember which.
Okay.
But it was a red jersey that had a white stripe across the middle and actually had the word Detroit across it.
Oh, yeah, I know the one.
That's a better concept than what they actually came out with last season.
I want them to go full-blown like NBA city jersey style and like go put artwork on the jersey and do something about the city or like Man, I'm so ready for hockey to go in that direction, man. For a reverse retro thing like that, where they wear it for a handful of home games, like I'm not saying anybody makes it their primary, but for a handful of home game special event type stuff, I love it.
Maybe
I think the league. I think it's great for the league. Well, we talked about promoting the Stars and giving them something cool to wear, giving them a jersey they're excited about. That's not just the standard old crest, the blah blah blah.
Right.
Like it's all part of growing the game.
I think here's the thing for me, and I don't want to make it sound like you're like wrong about this, because I think the possibility exists that they could go that direction. I don't know that I want an oversaturation of jerseys out there for teams, like in that realm of things. I think that more teams, one thing that more teams should do to really hit the point right now, nostalgia is very popular.
Yep.
So every time Carolina wheels out the Hartford Whaler jerseys, people go crazy, right?
Fair.
Okay, so the other day, I don't know if you saw this. The Dallas Stars had a night honoring Sergei Zubov. It was a jersey retirement night.
That jersey was nice.
Well, for warm-ups, they wore the classic Stars jerseys. Now, I don't know if those are going to come back in some way, shape, or form, but if they do, I would be lined up to buy one.
Well, I'd be willing to bet, kind of putting some pieces together here, it wouldn't surprise me if that's going to be what their jersey looks like if there's another round of reverse retros here.
Okay, so hang on a second. This is the story with that. So, and the video on Post to Post really documents this stuff pretty well for what he knows so far. Obviously, things change.
Right.
He actually just tweeted out the other day that he has a source that said that the Islanders are going to bring back the Fishermen.
Okay.
That he feels comfortable enough sharing, like, hey, listen,
like reporting it.
Well, like I trust this guy enough that it's going to be that, and if something changes last minute, I will admit that something probably changed last minute. But as of now, that's what he was told.
Interesting.
Like, you got that. The thing that really fuels things and this is the point he tried to make with a lot of teams and what their plans are when it comes to going retro in some way is, rather than it be a one-off, because these seem like one-year one-offs, you know what I mean? Like, whatever they wore, they're not wearing it again down the line.
Which I'm happy about, because the Flyers was not great.
Right, but whatever it is, they're not going to wear it again. Right? The idea is that instead of taking a jersey like the Dallas Stars from the late 90s, or another example is Buffalo talked about bringing back the classic Buffalo head jerseys in the old colors, I believe, too.
Ooh.
Maybe not. I don't know if that's exactly where it is, but that was the picture that went around anyway.
Yeah, I heard a couple different things.
Either way, the idea is that instead of making them the reverse retros, they would bring them back as alternates, because then they become a more permanent part of the rotation, as opposed to, because it's very much so like, and again, it's ironic. This is a team that I can reference because I don't even know if these jerseys are going to exist in a few years, but it's very much Arizona Coyotes going back to the Kachina, because
the old Houston Coyotes.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but if they by bringing those back, they brought them back as an alternate, and now that's more the primary home. So much so that they actually went off this offseason, and we listened to you fans. We're bringing back the road one too.
Nice.
So we're bringing back the white version of that jersey as well. You know what I mean? And there's enough teams out there, I think, that recognize that nostalgia is very popular. Bring back that classic Dallas Stars jersey, which, by the way, you've already laid the groundwork for, because not in the sense that it was used in a warm-up. it's an Adidas version. They didn't come out in like classic CCMs and go, "Hey, we're wearing the classic."
It's an
jersey.
homage thing,
Like,
right?
they got the league and Adidas to sign off on creating this jersey as a specialty item for one night, which means it can be done in regular
Again.
circulation.
Right.
So,
I mean, you really like this Stars jersey, huh?
no, I do, but I'm saying for any of these, this is the stepping stone to doing it. So like, I like that one. If Buffalo goes the direction that they plan to go as an alternate, please do. I think that's going to be really cool. There's other teams you could do this with. I mean, beyond, I'm trying to think, like, in terms of retro style jerseys. By the way, I'm not going to spoil the whole video. You'll have to go watch, but the Flyers version that he had in this video of what the concept for the reverse retro could be. First of all, he did say no intel, no source, no nothing. So he had to kind of come up with a concept. So there's
just give me a quick yes/no here.
Okay, tell me what you think it is, and I'll tell you if you're.
Is the primary color on this jersey black?
No.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Interesting.
On his concept.
Well, right. No, I know. No intel, no confirmation, no nothing. I know. Okay, interesting.
So
all right.
You don't want to know.
Nope, I don't. I want you to put the link in the description of the video, and I want to go watch it. So
okay, there we go.
All right, so it's been a little bit of a tangential show here. Let's hit some news here before we get out of here.
Right, and we don't really need to go into. I think we should disclose. We don't need to go into depth into the game that they played this week. They played one game since our last show. They did get a win. Kind of a down the stretch kind of game.
It was a hockey game that happened.
You know what it was more than anything, too, by the way? It's that it was two teams that really have been struggling lately. Like, Winnipeg's been struggling an awful lot, too. And if nothing else, I mean, you were setting yourself up for the same type of game that they've played. The Flyers have played against, you name it. I mean, they played San Jose like this. They played the Rangers like this. They even played the Kings like this down the stretch. And you were setting yourself up for the possibility of one of these games eventually becoming, like it could have gone either way. And the Flyers were the team in this particular case that got the odd man rush and perfectly executed.
And I do want to give a little credit. Kyle Connor scored 48 seconds into the game, and then after that, Carter Hart shut the door.
Carter Hart continues to be the bright spot of the season.
Yep, another excellent performance, especially now. He is definitely the bright spot of the season, especially now that Joel Farabee's
more by the day, by the game. Every time you see him, even in the games he's losing, he continues to be the piece that you know for sure and certain you've got to build around. You've got a goalie.
I am certain that Carter Hart should be the goaltender of the future for this team.
So there you go. I think that's all we need to say about that.
Fair enough.
And by the way, 2 more games this week, both against Detroit. We'll talk maybe more about them as a whole on the next show because there's a couple other games the following week after we take the week break that we are. Because is it? Pittsburgh on the road, Washington at home, and then we're leading into a pretty full week, all things considered, after that show.
Yeah, you start rolling. We start rolling 3 games a week for a while now.
Yeah.
Yep. So
do we want to go to the story that's out there that is probably going to be more or less announced in the near future? But
yeah, so
reports out there now.
We heard some interesting things coming out of the Chuck Fletcher press conference, and one of the stories that kind of came out that day, but wasn't really the big story that day because of the nature of that press conference, was the fact that Danny Briere had kind of stepped on with an extended role with the team, or an expanded role with the team. And it was announced recently that role has expanded even further, and he will be named assistant general manager here shortly. And it's Elliot Friedman said something along the lines of, it might be assistant to the general manager as opposed to assistant general manager. But either
jokes.
Yeah, right. But he will have, intimate knowledge of Philadelphia Flyers operations. He will be Chuck Fletcher's right-hand man. It certainly looks from the outside like he's the next general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, whenever that's going to be.
All right, but, and you're saying that from the outside, let me pull the curtain back a little bit.
Please.
Here. No, listen. First of all, full credit for the report that's out there, which I fully believe is completely 1,000% true. Nothing has really come out beyond this, like other than that the stories out there, and it's more like, yes, it's a report, but
And it was San Filippo crossing Broad, right?
Right. And he's been all over stuff like this, throughout the year.
Fantastic work out of him.
Right.
He's had a great year.
So when I see it coming from him, there's pretty much no doubt in my mind it's going to happen. And here's the thing. The clues were there anyway. The thing the way I kind of say it is that the thing nobody really seemed to know going forward was what's the name of the role. Like, we knew he was going to have an expanded role because that was what they had said at the press conference. Yeah, he's doing more things. He's already sitting in on all the most important management meetings, has been for 2 years. You know who he's working for, like in terms of he's the day-to-day operations, the president of the Maine Mariners, owned by the same people.
Yep.
And, pretty much the idea is if he's sitting on these meetings too, they like him, right? Like, obviously. So there's that. I was on 97.3 prior to Tuesday's game. And we actually had, maybe you can sympathize with this, maybe you can't. You've only been in the press box one time specifically, but there was a massive internet problem.
Oh, no.
Like, you couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi naturally. I was using a hotspot for up until literally, I'm not kidding, the internet worked for me 2 minutes before puck drop.
Wow.
Like their internet. I had internet through a hotspot otherwise. But
Thanks,
I could
Comcast.
not but I could not get the stream to work to be able to go and do the interview that way. So I last minute, less than 5 minutes before I'm supposed to be on the air, send a text to the host of the show and go, you're going to have to call me because I'm going to have to do this on the phone. So I go and what it actually allows me to do is get to a slightly quieter place during warm-ups. Not much because it's still the volume is still jacked up in there to levels that you can't believe during warm-ups, but as you know, it allows me to go and get to a quieter place, which is kind of back in that general area where the snacks are and all that.
The green room.
Kind of, if you will. I mean, there's nowhere to sit down in there. That's why I don't really call it a green room, but
the
it's
lobby. The
it's
foyer.
It's like a foyer. Yeah, that's a good place to go with it. Anyway, as I'm walking around, because I'm like somewhat pacing while I am on the phone and all that stuff, I do see I'm right outside of like where there's a wall that I'm like standing in front of that shows it's the Gene Hart Memorial press box. And behind the wall is the management box. Like there's 2 doors on either side, and that's the management for the Flyers. And then there's a box next to him, which I assume is used for either other additional people involved with this, or I think the visiting management and everybody like that sits down the other end. But whatever.
Might be like ownership. That's like Comcast reps and stuff like that.
I would not say so because of the fact that if so, I would have seen a whole lot more of Dave Scott probably.
That's fair.
I've never seen Dave Scott at a game, so wherever he sits is not with us.
Is Dave Scott at every game?
I don't think he's at every game, but I assume he's there more often than we know. It's just that he's not up on that level.
Maybe he's just not.
Either way.
Yeah.
And I do happen to be able to pretty easily identify that somebody standing outside of the management box at that time is somebody who I actually mentioned in the call at some point, which was, hey, they've really been talking about Danny Briere a lot lately. And
he's such a recognizable guy. He really is.
Yeah, for me, he is because of the fact that he's one of the few guys in the game who's on my eye level.
I was gonna make a height joke, and I was trying to figure out how to do it, but
I'll make it for you. He's one of the few guys I could look in the eye. I mean, like seriously. So it wasn't too hard to identify that a guy a smallish person, who's very clearly not above 6 foot. You can
no.
Okay, who has dark hair and very much in the style that Briere has, and you could just tell it was him.
Danny Briere, come on, y'all know what he looks like.
No, what I'm saying is that I don't see the guy's face. His back is to me, and I'm still looking at him going, "That's Danny Briere."
That's Danny Briere.
And it's not like it's a crazy thing to me because he's been at so many games in my entire time of doing this that it's not a shock to see him there. Right. But he is hanging out in the management box now.
I think he was there the night I was in the press box. I think he was
at a game, yes, but
in
the management box, no.
Well, he was up in the press box. He came over and chatted with the guys.
I'm saying this is like a little enclosed room where you're not even sitting alongside of people in the press. Like, they're not in a spot where they're communicating with the press.
No,
they're in
I
their
understand.
own little cushy little, almost like a suite.
Right.
I'm sure, but I mean, not the same level, obviously. But either way,
Yeah. So
he's sitting in that box now
right.
with Chuck Fletcher, with Brent Flair, with all the others.
So I know that I've been pretty vocal on this show.
Okay.
About the nepotism in this organization and the hiring former Flyers and the lather rinse for Pete and the blah blah blah.
Like I said, piece it together. They said his name.
It makes so much sense.
They got asked about him at the press conference, and they said he's going to have a more expanded role. Well, that would be a more expanded role. He is in attendance all the time now.
Right.
For 2. 3, he loses the job in Montreal. Like, he doesn't win out the job in Montreal, and the story is they're relieved that he didn't get the job in Montreal because they want him themselves. So, what do you think that means? He's going to have an expanded job. Now, I've heard
he's going to come to them and go, "Oh, so I heard that you don't want to lose me." Okay.
No, I think if nothing else. Okay, so again, the report that Anthony Sanfilippo put out there, which is again I believe to be completely rock solid, 1,000% over. Well, not to mention the fact that there was a confirmation on said story, by the way. It wasn't just Dan Sanfilippo saying, "Hey, I got a report out here. Like, I got a source telling me that Briere's going to be."
Right. Elliot Friedman backed it up.
Elliot Friedman backed it up.
Right.
So guess what? That's a double sourcing here.
And that is
not double sourcing. That's a double confirmation. That's a guy who's got great rock solid sources.
I was going to say, and we've mentioned before,
rock solid sources on the back on a national scale.
Elliot Friedman is the gold standard of he has good sources.
Right. But either way, so it's not to say, believe it or not, what I actually wonder how true this is or not. And again, now there's nothing that indicates this in either, like in the report or anything like that. Is he already in the role without it being announced? Like, was he at Tuesday's game as an assistant general manager?
I'd be willing to bet that that's the case.
Like in that sense, like he's there all the time. He's in the management box. Is this already in place? And he, like they mentioned this at the press conference, he's done just about everything. Like,
so is it weird if Danny Briere is the one making the phone calls to trade Claude Giroux?
It's interesting because of the fact that like I know where you're going with this.
That's weird, man.
It's because of the fact that what was it? It wasn't a decade ago, but maybe it was a little.
Sure was.
Oh yeah, it was a decade ago.
Sure was.
Close to. All right, yeah, it was exactly a decade. It was 11 years ago, I think, is what it was. That he's living with him. That Claude Giroux is his roommate. What was it? Like it's like Danny Briere was Claude Giroux's billet family in in the Philly area because he's got nowhere else to go. He's a single guy. He's at that point, what was he 23, 24 years old?
Something like that.
They just came off of an incredible playoff run where Giroux was just as Briere was the biggest part of it. I mean, Briere was the one putting up points like
30 points.
But Giroux had an insane playoff that year as well.
Right.
Scored the biggest Stanley Cup final goal that they had.
Right, and now Claude Giroux's kind of in that Danny Briere role.
To an extent, but Claude Giroux's now the guy with the family and like all that type of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is that the thing is that the story I keep hearing is that they're not going to go to him and say they're not going to talk to Giroux and say, "Will you do it?"
Right.
They're willing to move him if he comes to them and says, "I want to go somewhere. I'm willing to waive it."
Man, I don't know if that's the way to do it. I think you got to ask.
No,
him.
I think that actually is the way to do it because to me, as an organization, it means you've already fessed up to the fact that you're going to do it.
Right.
Like you're willing to do it. That's half the battle. Is don't get nostalgic here as an organization and worry about whether or not he can be a lifetime Flyer anymore. Whether you want him to be or not. Like
I think he might want to be.
Willingness. Yeah, but that's what the problem with that or not the problem. I can't argue with that. At that point, that's not them doing him a disservice. If he says,
that's
"I don't
him
want to go
exercising
anywhere,"
his no trade clause.
That's you sign the contract, you have a no move, and here's the thing: they don't have to re-sign him in the offseason.
Man, that's oof. Oh, why would you break my heart like that?
Hold on. As awful as it would be to not have him back on the team next year for nothing,
just full blown Zdeno Chara him and let him go.
Yeah, but I'm saying you can't deny that if he doesn't want to go somewhere, he doesn't want to go somewhere. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. I think that they are willing, the way I hear it, they're willing to move him. Like if the ball is in his court, it's his decision. That means if he wants to be moved, if he says he'll waive the no move clause, we're willing to do it.
Right.
And here's the thing. If you've got the no move clause built into your contract, the only reason you would even mention I'm willing to waive the no move clause is that you want to be moved. Why
Absolutely.
why would you not? You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't sit there and hang on to it and go, oh, like, hey, like you wouldn't be in Chuck Fletcher's shoes or anybody in management and go, hey, Claude, we've been actually, we've been kicking the tires a little bit. We've seen who teams are interested. We've got something that we might want to bring to your attention.
Right.
If the ball's in his court and he says, I'm willing to waive it, that means trade me.
Yep. It sure does.
That's what it is at the end of the day. So they're already sitting here saying, listen, if he wants to go, we know what's at stake here, and we're going to let him go. And believe me, there's more to it than saying that in front of a press conference audience, to just sit there and say the ball's in his court.
Right.
I think that, when it comes down to it, I'm sure that when Chuck Fletcher's having those 3 or 4 conversations a month with Giroux's agent among, the agent of other players on said team, I'm sure that the conversation comes up like, hey, it's not going to happen here. Like, if he really wants to win, it's something he should consider.
Right.
Like, I'm sure that those things happen behind the scenes and just don't get said in the public eye. That's where I'm going with it. So, I don't want to sit there and necessarily say that it's going to be like Danny Briere is going to be tasked with this. I don't think it's that level yet.
I know, but it would be weird.
No, but he's involved in the management decision-making process of it. And let's put it this way, if we're to take what was said at the press conference word for word and assume it's all completely 1,000% true, if Danny Briere has been sitting in on every major management meeting for the last 2 years, then certainly the conversation of what do we do with Claude Giroux, and he's
been a part of that conversation.
And he's been a part of that conversation. Yep. And you know what? As a guy who in his own playing career has been traded on multiple occasions,
I'm sure he was a voice in that conversation.
And I know that because it's funny, like, to answer your actual kind of counterpoint here, where you got, like you even said, how do you avoid people thinking it's same old Flyers? They're bringing back a former player. I think that this is a guy who understands the younger game and the younger player better. It's a guy who can sit there and go, first of all, I think he can talk to young players. Hell, he's got 3 of them in his own household. Like, he's got 3 up and coming players who may be NHLers or may not be.
But he spent the last couple years in the ECHL working with younger players and development stuff. So
you got that first. Then second of all, you need a guy who got out recently enough and he retired recently enough, that, like 5 years ago, that you can sit there and start talking about it like you understand the concepts of how to win the game today. You understand that it's not like he's not coming in as a Broad Street bully.
Right.
He's coming in as a guy who understands that speed and skill is where it's at right now, who knows that play and who's played with some pretty good teams, by the way, after playing in Philly, by the way. Like, hello, he played on the Colorado Avalanche for a few years during that stretch of time when they were getting said players, but he got to play on a team that had Landeskog, McKinnon, and I believe Rantanen. Makar was not in the league yet when he was still playing, but Rantanen, I think, was either a rookie or just getting started.
Yeah, it's definitely not same old Flyers, and that's why I'm kind of okay with it. This is an exception to that. I don't believe they should hire, list any number of old Flyers up to and including Rick Tocchet. But in the meantime, we have Danny Briere, who, like you mentioned, is newer generation, played 10 years after Tocchet. Also played other places for the majority of his career, came up through Buffalo. Ended up, like you said, going to Colorado.
Well, I also think there's an element of it, and Chris Pronger is another good example of this, because Chris Pronger was kind of being groomed in that role, and I don't know if he's even doing much now. He might just be an advisor type guy who...
I think he's biding his time and putting some years in. He'll get a job at some point.
He is, but his wife runs like a travel agency, and he's got some pretty heavy involvement in that as well.
Yes.
So I think that he's kind of dabbling in the management side again, but also really enjoying some of the things about retirement.
Sure.
So, why
well,
not?
That's why I think he's kind of biding his time and putting some years in and not taking it too seriously.
Where I was trying to go with this is that I think there's also a different element to the same old Flyers argument when the guy is not just being mentioned among Flyer possibilities. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree with that
how
too.
How many times have the Flyers hired a guy? Like, when the no, hear me out. The most recent one I can think of that falls in line with this is, okay, how many times have the Flyers hired a guy like Craig Berube, let's say, to be the next head coach, where you go, he's only ever been here, he's only ever been part of this organization, realistically. Like, he's played for a couple others. I'm not saying he never played for anything, but his entire coach group, grooming as a coach, came in this organization. So he's the natural next pick to be the head coach. And they give him 1 full year to kind of try it out. And what happens? it goes nowhere. Like,
Right.
and then he goes somewhere else, gets a second chance, and wins. And
Sure.
now he's a name that's being talked about as a potential free agent because he's not signed through this year. And St. Louis, apparently, again, another Crossing Broad thing that's been out there, has a budget.
Right.
So let's see what happens with that, I guess. But like,
Well,
but here's the other thing about Berube. Berube also falls into the, like, Rick Tocchet played at the tail end of the bullies kind of thing.
yeah.
And Berube certainly as an enforcer type falls into line with that style. Briere being a modern type player who, again, whose game was predicated around speed and skill at that time, also comes in to me having had interest and being known around the league as a rising star management candidate. That you go, this isn't your same old Flyers management candidate thing. Like they've groomed.
This is you picking up a stud.
But this is a guy who you've given the reins to for a team in the minors. You know, okay, maybe you did it in a weird sort of way, and I say that in the sense of you did it by the team that owns the Flyers also bought the team that you're gonna run. Right. Here it is. It's like being the rich dad who hands your kid the keys to the mansion to the lesser mansion in Maine while we keep the mansion in Philly, right? Like it's a little bit like that. But when somebody else becomes interested in that person, you value them a lot more. So when he almost got the Montreal job, that was a big deal.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's where I go with that. So we will see where that goes. I mean, more than that, like, it's pretty obvious he's going to be in this role at least through the rest of the year. And then you go, what happens next? Yep. Because there's certainly a lot of possibilities. I turned around and I even said, don't be surprised if his name comes up a lot as a GM candidate, not just because, like, with an uncertain future around the rest of where the organization goes. And look, we can sit there and talk about, again, like we mentioned last week's show, the press conference was the dominant topic. And, you know, Dave Scott says Chuck's my guy and all that stuff. But how much weight does that really hold in the long run?
Yep.
Like, that's kind of the thing. And we'll see where it goes.
And that's one of the things. Yep.
Well, I'm letting you wrap this part up, and then I was going to just hit the Winter Olympics thing really quick.
We'll hit the Winter Olympics real quick. We do actually have to head to a wrap here pretty quickly. So Winter Olympics, there's been a couple of games. We talked a little bit about Canada versus U.S. in women's hockey.
Yeah.
As kind of the premium matchup that we're looking for over in that division. The men kick off in a couple of days here. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, the women's game is on Monday night again, the U.S. Canada women's game, and then realistically, I think after that, again, I'll try to pull up the schedule really quick here so we can get to a quick wrap. But I believe that's the last, like, kind of pre-tournament game. Yeah, okay. So after that women's game, that U.S. Canada women's game, the next game that the U.S. team will play will count for
as a knockout game,
as a knockout game in the medal rounds. Yes, so. Quarterfinal, and the quarterfinals apparently aren't going to be, so there won't be any hockey on in the Olympics for a handful of days. It's until like from Monday to Thursday.
Okay.
Or at least featuring the U.S. team.
Right.
I should say. I don't know if there's more round robin group plays type games leading up to that point that the U.S. just isn't involved with.
Right. It's one of those things. It's tough to follow the daily schedule because there's just so much. Happening
it's tough to follow the daily schedule because there's a lot happening, and also because of the fact that, realistically speaking, I have written down that the U.S. Canada women's game is Monday, February 7th but it's at 11 o'clock at night. Realistically, it is a Tuesday game in China.
Right.
So that's really, I guess, the story of it. And then the men's tournament is supposed to start on the 10th, right around. Okay. So the women's tournament is going to hit the medal round on the same day that the men's tournament starts.
Ooh, perfect. So by the time the medal round wraps up, you get your.
Well, no. Like, you're going to have quarterfinals and semifinals, so it's going to It's all going to overlap a little bit. Now, in fairness, the U.S. men's team also kind of opened. They only have 3 games scheduled in so-called group play, if you will. And then there's this thing called the qualification playoff, which I don't even know if it's going to apply to the U.S. I guess if they do well enough, they won't even have to play.
I think that's like a wild card spot.
Right. I think it's for everybody who doesn't win the group. Yeah.
Right.
But the only real, I shouldn't say the only, because so U.S. Canada for the men's is a late Friday night, so it's technically a Saturday game in China, but it's a late Friday game. And then U.S. Germany could be a fun one, actually, because Germany.
Yeah, it could be.
Germany's got a little bit of and the U.S. team is not exactly like we said. This is not for the men's side. This is not the juggernauts that we're supposed to go.
No, this Olympics is always going to be a little bit disappointing from the men's hockey perspective.
But it's got a natural feel to it because of the fact that at
Sure.
this point in time, it's the best, realistically, the best either amateur players or strictly pros that are out of the game. Like Canada's got Eric Stahl on the roster, who is not playing in the NHL
And
anymore.
Devin Dubnyk.
Obviously. Yeah, but still, I mean, when you don't play against that level of players for a little while, if you come across a player that's that level, you might be a little rusty.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that creates some interesting things. Actually, we're going to be able to do. Oh yeah, that does line up beautifully. We're going to do our next show right after the gold medal men's game.
Oh, perfect. Well, that leads us nicely into wrapping this one up. I will note once again that we are going to be skipping next week. We're taking a little bit of an Olympic break here.
Yeah, the point of that was to not do a premiere on the same night as the Super Bowl.
That is also the other case.
Well, listen. The NHL has 4 games scheduled that day. The Flyers are not one of them, obviously, but the NHL does. And that's a day when whatever's on the schedule, they get out of Dodge like by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, you don't start a game later than 2 o'clock in the afternoon so as to not interfere with the time slot of that football game. So
Yep.
We're going to do the same thing.
We are also going to dodge that matchup. We will be back in 2 weeks. We'll be premiering at 8 o'clock on the YouTube channel, barring any technical difficulties. So you can find us there over on the YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. That is down right below me if you're watching on the YouTube channel, as is at Kevin_Durso. Make sure to follow him. Follow at Sports Talk PHL because we're over there, and at Flyerdelphia too. You can find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, SportsTalkPhilly.com. We're all over the place. You can find us anywhere, and we will find you in a couple of weeks. We'll see you.